Minister has said that Scotland's children risk becoming a forgotten generation if more energy and urgency aren't put into education during the pandemic. Our education reporter Lucy White has been speaking to Lord McConnell. Lucy, why has Jack McConnell decided to speak out about this now?
Sally, Lord McConnell, when he was First Minister back in the early 2000s, made education one of his top priorities. He says he's speaking out now because health has rightly been the focus of the pandemic, but he's worried about a major crisis in schools. The Scottish Government isn't shying away from what it calls the disruption and challenges facing schools. And every day we're hearing about just how schools are going to cope with bringing pupils back. For example, today we heard about one primary in Aberdeenshire where pupils are going to be able to attend just 4 days in every 3 weeks. Lord McConnell told me it's worrying, particularly for the most vulnerable children. At the moment, just 1% of Scotland's children are going into school buildings. The majority get most of their learning at home.
Can we all do it? Reece, you ready?
Education and childcare hubs are available specifically for vulnerable young people and the children of key workers, but they're underused. The former First Minister, Lord McConnell, says many of Scotland's most disadvantaged children are not getting any schooling at all.
Well, if we can create brand new hospitals in a matter of days and weeks using the Army and the National Health Service, if we can create a furlough scheme that's protected jobs and also another scheme to help protect self-employed people in a matter of weeks, then we should have been able to create an education service that in particular supports and services the most vulnerable children. And they need to make sure that these children are not a forgotten generation, the way that a generation back in the 80s who were forgotten left us with social, economic and personal problems.
We spoke to parents and grandparents in Inverness about the impact of children not being in a school environment.
Our kids are okay, but kids that are from a less well-off background, they might need support with technology, like iPads and stuff like that.
Do lots of homework as well. They get lots of stuff, yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, like 5 things a week.
Yeah.
I think it affects their reading, their writing, concentration.
And the ability to interact with other people.
Yes.
It's a bit tricky because obviously the parent needs to understand what the schoolwork's asking of the pupil first, so you need to get your head around it.
The Scottish Government says it's investing money to help children from disadvantaged backgrounds.
What we have done and what local authorities have done have been to support children and young people within their family environment, supporting them with learning, support with to their well-being, and support also of food being provided to families in lieu of free school meals. So there's been a range of measures that have been undertaken.
Next week, some of Scotland's children going into primary 1 and secondary school will start to attend school for just a few hours. But for most, it will be months before they're back behind a desk. Lucy White, Reporting Scotland.
Tonight on Reporting Scotland, as the First Minister vows to scrutinise council plans for schools returning, parents say the uncertainty is affecting their children.
It's going on and on and on, and there's going to be a payback for mental health in young people. It's not right, it's not fair.
Good evening. The First Minister says she wants pupils to get back to normal schooling as quickly as possible. Schools are due to reopen from the 11th of August, but will initially have a blended approach involving face-to-face teaching and home learning. But the plans vary from council to council. Glasgow hopes to provide half the normal number of hours with teachers, while Edinburgh say some children will be back only 1 day a week. Now Nicola Sturgeon says she wants pupils back in the classroom full-time as soon as it's safe, and there are no plans for blended learning to last a year. Here's our education correspondent, Jamie McIver.
These children were in school today. They were back in their primary school briefly to help them get ready for secondary school in August. They've been learning at home since March.
It's kind of nice seeing like friends and all that, but it's a bit weird because it's not all normal.
It's nice to see familiar faces and just the teachers, and just to be back here, it's quite nice. Yeah.
Children across Scotland will be going back to school from August the 11th. They'll be spending some time with their teacher and some time learning at home or online. It's a model called blended learning, but the blend varies across the country. At this school, the plan is for children to have almost half the normal amount of time with teachers.
So typically the young people will be in school for 2 of the 5 school days, and during that time we'll be focusing on some of the key curricular areas. Literacy and numeracy will be a real focus for us, and all of that governed by the children's well-being.
But time in school will vary across Scotland. At this school in Inverness, children might be back just 2 days a fortnight, and many Highland parents are concerned by the local plans.
I don't think that they're going to be teaching anything in those 2 days. If you think about how children transition into school and out of school, there's always, Monday, probably a lot doesn't get done. Friday, a lot doesn't get done because they're just getting back to seeing each other after the weekend.
So why can't all children be back in class for the same amount of time? The main reason is social distancing. The design of a school or the size of a classroom affects the number of children who can come in. Councils may start to use libraries or sports halls as extra space, and campaigners want more of this. The government has warned before that school may not be normal for some time, but the First Minister wants normality as soon as it's safe.
It is absolutely not the case that we are planning for blended learning with children learning at home for part of the school week to last a year or anything like it. On the contrary, we do not want blended learning to last a single moment longer than is absolutely necessary.
Opponents say the situation's chaotic.
We really don't know what's going on. We don't know if exams will or will not take place next year. We don't know how many days a week children will be going back to school. We don't know how parents are expected to deliver a full curriculum. And the question that no one's answered yet is we don't know how parents can go back to work if their children are stuck at home 2 or 3 days a week.
These pupils will be starting at their secondary school in 8 weeks' time. In that time, much may change. Jamie McIver, reporting Scotland.
Well, as we've heard, schools, teachers, pupils and parents are all grappling with plans to reimagine how their schools might work. But Edinburgh's proposals to have only a third of its pupils in at any one time have drawn criticism from the First Minister, who said they are not good enough. It would mean that pupils would be in their classrooms for about 1 day a week. The council says it's trying to ensure staff and pupils are safe. David Cowan reports.
At the end of this summer, Adam will start secondary, but most of the time he'll still be at home. The 12-year-old says 1 day a week is better than nothing.
At least we get a day, I guess.
The same will apply to his younger brother and every one of Edinburgh's 50,000 state school pupils.
Angry, disillusioned, disappointed. If I'm honest, I can't see that becoming a reality. I mean, I just cannot believe that Edinburgh City Council can allow, possibly, 1 day a week.
The council plans that a third of its pupils will be in school at any one time. It says it's following national guidance on social distancing and hygiene and trying to keep children and staff safe within the physical constraints of its school estate. Across Edinburgh, schools are trying to work out how this will work. Potentially, pupils could be in their classrooms for 4 days every month. The rest of the time, in theory, they'll be learning at home.
I don't think schooling at home is going to be very easy, especially for the little one. So, yeah, quite worrying. Hopefully, we'll have a plan B or a plan A.
The SNP Labour administration is being urged to use empty public buildings and recruit retired teachers. The Conservatives say pupils could wear masks.
I think we've seen some interesting evidence over the weekend about the role that masks can play. Obviously, in England, they've become mandatory on public transport. If that evidence stands up, I think if that could close the distance and increase the numbers in classrooms, that's something we definitely should be looking at.
Whatever happens, teachers will have to teach in school and online.
I think a lot of our members in Edinburgh have been quite angry today at some of the comments. There does seem to be a tension between Scottish Government and local government, and I think that has to be resolved as quickly as possible. We need more classrooms, we need more teachers, and we need the funding to make that happen.
The City Council declined our request for an interview. In a statement, it said it's trying to find extra accommodation and welcomed the prospect of additional funds from the Scottish Government. David Cowan, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Well, I'm joined now by our political editor, Brian Taylor. Brian, this is such a difficult situation, isn't it? And opposition parties have been highly critical of what's coming out of the Scottish Government on this, saying there's been mixed messaging.
Yes, they have indeed. I mean, unless you're dealing with quantum physics, you don't want to be talking about uncertainty at all with regard to schools or education. But there was a miasma of uncertainty left hanging over the schools and the future by Nicola Sturgeon's own deputy, John Swinney, who is also the Education Secretary. Now, to be fair to Mr Swinney, in a BBC interview yesterday, he said repeatedly that he didn't want the difficulties to last for a moment longer than was necessary. But he did say that it was unlikely that schools would return to normal by the end of the session, and that led to media coverage and media speculation that he was talking about an entire year of potential disruption. Nicola Sturgeon knew she had to dispel that mist. She had to deal with that right away, so she tried to offer clarity. She said there was no way whatsoever that blended education would last for an entire year. It would end as quickly as possible, although, to be honest, that's basically the message that John Swinney was giving. But she knew she had to offer clarity. She also played down the suggestion that parents might be penalised if they failed to send kids to school. She was trying to offer reassurance. She was trying to offer as much certainty as possible. Now, as you say, opposition parties jumped on that. The Tories called it desperate. The Greens said it was delusional to think that there could be certificate SQA exams by next spring. But Nicola Sturgeon said she wanted parents to believe that it was our absolute priority to ensure that no damage occurs to their children's future prospects. Indeed, she said at one point she wished she had a magic wand to wave and sort it all out for the parents, the pupils and the teachers. You know what? She doesn't, and she can't.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Brian.